Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I've said on this platform, and I'll repeat it, the Constitution Amendment number 3, yes, it seeks to give Mnangagwa greater dictatorial powers. It will extend his stay in office beyond the stipulated maximum 2 terms. That is a problem. I do not deny it. But there is a difference here. When somebody tries to give you the impression that fighting amendment number 3 is now a now or never fight to end the dictatorship, that is an exaggeration. That is not true at all. I've said on this platform that this amendment is a decoy. Even when it started way back, soon after the 2023 elections, when Mnangagwa hunting dogs started chanting, Mnangagwa Ningewachipo 2013, it was meant to be a decoy. Mnangagwa had just gone through an election in which both SADC and the AU election observers had condemned as flawed and illegal. He did not want the nation to dwell on that. So by throwing in this suggestion that he's going to stay beyond even the stipulated 2-term limits, he knew that many Zimbabweans will forget that he rigged the elections and will be concerned about, oh, we can't let him stay beyond his 2028. The decoy worked. And he has since been working it, massaging it, rubbing it in. And right now, the Zanu PF propaganda machine is in overdrive. They are promoting amendment number 3 as if everything depends on that amendment. The truth of the matter is, they do not want people to look at what is happening on the ground. That we have held 2023 elections, and Zanu PF rigged them. Even our own continental body, AU, regional body, SADC, condemned the process as flawed. The prospect of us going into the next election with not even a token reform implemented is what should concern us. Are we going to have another rigged election? But clearly, of course, we will have another rigged election if we don't implement the reforms. But Zanu PF does not want you to think of implementing the reforms. It wants you to draw your attention elsewhere. That Mnangagwa is going to stay beyond the 2 terms. And as long as you have your attention focused on that, you'll not realize until it's too late that the next elections are being held once again without even a token reform implemented. So the decoy, Zanu PF is building it up to make sure that people cannot think of anything else. The opposition, for their part, they've taken up the decoy for their own selfish reasons. People like Tendai Biti have been up in arms, assuring the nation that he and his colleagues are going to fight this amendment number 3.
That is to say, 2/3 in the National Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate. It must then go to a referendum, because it is a bill altering term limits in the country. The referendum is a simple process, Baba. The referendum simply asks whether you are saying yes or no. Because we are going to campaign and live in the mountains to get that no vote.
What the people of Zimbabwe should be concerned about here is that here is Tendai Biti and his fellow MDC CCC leaders who were given the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms, which would have dismantled the Zanu PF dictatorship. Zanu PF would be history by now if Tendai Biti and company had implemented the reforms, particularly during the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so. They didn't have to live in the mountains. They had the opportunity to do so. They were in the government of national unity. They only had to submit reform proposals in parliament. They had the majority in parliament. And you didn't need the majority anyway, because any one of them, any one of the members of parliament, senator, deputy minister, minister, deputy prime minister, or prime minister himself could submit a reform proposal. In 5 years of the GNU, not even one reform proposal was ever submitted. The reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections are what we need, because rigging elections is one of the pillars on which the Zanu PF dictatorship stands. Yes, this amendment seeks to give Mnangagwa more powers, but it is nonsensical to suggest that that amendment is a pillar on which the Zanu PF dictatorship stands. But it is in the interests of Tendai Biti, Job Sikhala, and all these other opposition individuals who are coming out now and saying they are going to fight the amendment, to give the impression that the amendment is important. It's a now or never in the fight to end the Zanu PF dictatorship, because it gives them relevance. Even if the amendment is stopped, Zanu PF will be able to rig the next elections, and the dictatorship will remain in place. The Zanu PF dictatorship has survived all these last 46 years without the amendment. So why all of a sudden are we being given the impression that without the amendment, the Zanu PF dictatorship will collapse? That is nonsense. The dictatorship has survived all these years without the additional powers that the amendment is seeking to give the regime. Let's get that one clear. And if we are serious about ending the dictatorship, then we must be serious about getting the reforms implemented. And right now, Zanu PF is getting away with it again. Because while we are concentrating on this amendment, we are forgetting that the regime is not implementing even one token reform. That the regime will rig the next elections, wherever they're going to be, no problem. And that our opposition friends will participate in those flawed elections as usual. Here is a reminder of Professor Jonathan Moyo talking about ZEC, why we need to implement, to carry out reforms.
Chigumba is the mother of the rigging, and Malaba is the father of the rigging, endorsed what the mother was doing. It is actually scandalous. You see, ZEC is not supposed to be controlled by any authority.
Yeah, it's supposed to be independent.
It is an independent constitutional body. In fact, independent commission. It's a Chapter 12 institution. But ZEC did not run anything important. It never did. The computers were run by Africom. The registration, accreditation, and so forth were run by a CIO company. So between the CIO and the army, they ran the processes, the operations, using their instruments. Either Matsanga, who is actually active, she's employed. She joined the, not joined, she was seconded to the electoral body in 2008 as a divisional intelligence officer. Now she is a director in the CIO. As we speak right now, she's a director, and she was congratulated and rewarded for rigging the 2018 election, and she was given a house in Borodale, a posh mansion in there. So there is a serious problem that, whereas on paper ZEC is supposed to be an independent constitutional body that runs elections transparently, efficiently, and impartially. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because it does not even itself run. The elections are run for ZEC by the securocrat.
In other words, stopping this amendment, number 3, will not change the political realities on the ground. ZEC is still controlled by Zanu PF come the next elections. So Zanu PF will still be able to rig the elections. So this whole hyper pretending that if we stop the amendment, we have killed the Zanu PF dictatorship is utter nonsense. These people are trying to deceive the people for their own selfish ends. I repeat, constitutional amendment number 3 is a decoy. Yes, of course, if it passes, it will give Mnangagwa extra powers. But whether it passes or not, it will have no effect as long as Zanu PF is able to rig the next elections. We will still be stuck with a dictatorship. If it passes, Mnangagwa will be the dictator. if it fails, some other Zanu PF leader will emerge and will be the dictator. It is academic which dictator we have. Just as it was academic in 2017. Who was the dictator in 2017? Before the coup, it was Robert Mugabe. After the coup, it was Mnangagwa. What difference did it make to the people? No difference at all. The nation still continued in its economic decline because we had failed to address the fundamental problem, the dictatorship itself. So I would like to repeat, amendment number 3 is not going to change the fundamentals. The Zanu PF dictatorship will still have all its dictatorial powers that it had in 2023. Yes, they are seeking to add onto those dictatorial powers, but adding is not the same thing as removing the fundamental ones. And the most fundamental ones are the ability to blatantly rig the elections and get away with it. And the opposition who are trying to blow this amendment out of proportion, they are doing it for their own selfish reasons. They want the people of Zimbabwe to believe that they are the champions fighting in the corner of the ordinary people, when for the last 26 years, they've achieved nothing. Ever since the GNU debacle, they've participated in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. That is the reality that we've got to wake up to. For those of you who continue to pretend that the opposition are not sellouts, here is another reminder that you are just burying your head in the sand. The opposition leaders were bribed by Robert Mugabe during the GNU, and that is why they failed to implement even one token democratic reform. Here is the reality, the political reality about our opposition leaders.
Bhazi rikafira musango, munhu asina kwaari kuenda mubhazi mumu anofara kuti ndo patopumba pake nditori nevamwe vangu pana. Munhu anorwadziwa nekurara musango munhu ane kumba.
Taibadana kumba kwangu.
But amana kumba gumbezi rangu reriya. Mana so. But munhu asina imba hatete kurara musango. So opposition inomake sure kuti vanhu vaya vawane minda. But may he so rest in peace vatsvangirai. Prazi ravo vanga vainaro. Chamisa anaro.
Ane family.
Kana azoramba. Ndoenda newe.
Rikupi.
Ane farm.
Ribi.
I know madresse munhu anetsa kuti focha, but anaro chakudza off camera.
Okay.
Ane mine.
Ane mine.
Ane makaseo.
Yeah?
Yes. Biti. Ane prazi. Hauna kumboona here picture yabiti achitenga mombe kuna Temba Mliswa. Zekuisa kuprazi. One of the biggest beef producers in the Matabeleland region, the Washman Ngwe.
Okay.
Yes, ane prazi. Anautenga beneficiary land reform. But what they did is to discourage their people from acquiring my farms. Because why is out munakaona something chapiwa nehurumende achapikisa.
Are you for real, Mr. Ganesha?
No mfunza Washman Ngwe kuti haasi kuita beef here, producer beef here paprasi. Tonyaendanetsa upo waching'ono gore rere. Handiti kuti stand ya upo waching'ono standard ine painogumira. But vakatotaura nehurumende nemasabhuku ikaextendwa because aita god.
So let me reiterate the point. Constitutional Amendment number 3 is a decoy. Both Zanu PF and our MDC CCC friends are exaggerating its importance for their own selfish reasons. They will be participating in the next elections, flawed as they are, just as they participated in flawed elections since 2013. But they are now hiding behind fighting Amendment number 3 to give the impression to the gullible and naive electorate that they are still fighting in Povo's corner. If they were serious about fighting to end the dictatorship, they will be focusing on implementing the democratic reforms, and if failure to implement reforms, to make sure that people do not participate in the flawed elections to give the vote rigging Zanu PF legitimacy. They are not focusing on that for their own selfish reasons. The worst thing Zimbabwe can do is go into the next elections, flawed as they are, participate in those flawed elections, give Zanu PF legitimacy, and perpetuate the dictatorship. It will only prove that 45, 46, 48 years later, we have learned nothing from the past. For heaven's sake, let's open our eyes and open up our minds and not be so easily conned into fighting a war that we know, fighting a decoy when the real fight is there. Both Zanu PF and MDC know Amendment number 3 is a decoy. And we need to open our eyes to see that for ourselves. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good night.